Hello, everyone. My name is Anton Grishko. I'm Chief Architect at Prophecy Labs, and basically working with our beautiful FinOps platform called Unisky, and I'm encouraging everyone to register there and use it. And so let's get back to business. Let me introduce our speaker today, Jesse DeRose, FinOps Consultant. Jesse, hello. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing well, Anton. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good as well. So what's going to be a topic today?
So the topic today is beyond cost optimization. We're going to be talking about how to solve your FinOps challenges, thinking beyond cost optimization.
Nice. So the stage is yours.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
So hello, everyone. My name is Jesse DeRose. My pronouns are he, him. I'm an independent FinOps advisor who empowers companies to understand and manage their public cloud spend. I combine industry research with a decade of experience building digital transformation programs to help my clients make data-driven business decisions with their cloud spend data. In my spare time, I create educational content with the FinOps Foundation to help companies start their FinOps journeys, and I volunteer in my local community. Now, to accurately frame our conversation on FinOps today, we need to talk about cloud computing. Cloud adoption and digital transformations have been a hot ticket item for the last decade. 78% of executives surveyed by PwC across the public and private sectors and across multiple industries reported adopting cloud in most or all parts of their business. And it's not slowing down anytime soon. IDC saw companies increase compute and storage cloud infrastructure spending 19.4% year over year in 2022 alone. By 2024, Gartner expects almost half of IT spending on system infrastructure, infrastructure software, application software, and business process outsourcing to shift from traditional solutions to cloud solutions. And the promise of building in the cloud is huge. For example, a study by MIT research fellow Wang Jin showed companies that adopted cloud reported 6.9% higher sales. And AWS's homepage touts using their platform will allow you to build sophisticated applications with increased flexibility, scalability, and reliability. GCP says its platform will help you drive innovation. Anything is possible in the cloud. You can build anything you want, wherever you want, as long as you're willing to pay for it. Running workloads in the cloud can be expensive, and the billing model is very different from running workloads in data centers. So the financial models that worked for data centers won't work in the cloud. In a data center, you purchase some amount of server hardware or rack space once and amortize and depreciate that spend over the course of your data center contract. Your spend is consistent because your costs don't change until you reach the end of your contract. Whereas in the cloud, you purchase what you want as you want it, whether that's compute, storage, performance metrics, or the weird mnemonics that AWS comes up with, like load balancer capacity units, whatever that means. And your spend can vary wildly, day to day, month to month, and even year to year. It's variable. It's very variable. And cloud platforms don't always warn you about this shift up front. They'll reactively give you resources if you ask for them, but they rarely proactively set you up for financial visibility as you spend. And they also don't teach you how to read that 15-page PDF bill that they give you at the end of the month. That doesn't actually give you any insights into your spend. It's not a great experience. So from this pain point was born FinOps, or cloud cost management, or cloud financial management, depending on which buzzwords you want to use. And for those of you who aren't familiar, FinOps is a discipline and cultural practice that enables organizations to get maximum business value by helping engineering, finance, technology, and business teams to collaborate on data-driven spending decisions. I broke up the definition this way on this slide specifically to make the benefits clear. FinOps allows you to get maximum business value by helping teams collaborate on data-driven spending decisions. FinOps programs puts the power back in the hands of cloud users and product owners and cloud spend owners, helping them accomplish business goals. So I'm here today because I've spent the last few years advising business leaders on FinOps, coaching them through what it takes to manage their cloud spend. And I've noticed a trend that I want to share with you all. A company usually starts their FinOps journey with the crisis that cloud spend is too high. We need to cut costs. We need to cut costs 10%, 20% over the next couple months or over the next year. And there's some early success with cost optimization work. Maybe you upgrade old instance types to newer instance types. Maybe you put a lifecycle policies in place for some of your data, or maybe you purchase some reservations. But then there's almost always a setback. In the best case scenario, teams will complete the tasks that you've given them and then go back to business as usual. And in the worst case scenario, teams will actively fight against your requests and your FinOps program will stall completely. And that leads back to the original crisis. This cycle at best incurs a lot of friction in the company, and at worst, it just fails outright. So what do? I always like to think of this cycle like spokes on a wheel going round and around without stopping. And it makes me think of a quote from Daenerys Targaryen in Game of Thrones. I'm not going to stop the wheel. I'm going to break the wheel. And I know Daenerys isn't the best role model, but in this particular situation, she's right. You can't just stop the cycle because inevitably it'll start up again. Instead, you have to break out of the cycle to truly build a successful FinOps program. And if we go back to the definition of FinOps, FinOps is a discipline and a cultural practice. Most people focus only on the discipline component because most content and tooling overemphasizes the discipline component. And to be clear, the discipline is important. Cost optimization is extremely important, but it's not enough by itself. It doesn't scale and it can cause the cycle that we just discussed. You have to think beyond cost optimization if you want to solve your FinOps challenges. And today we're going to do just that by focusing on the cultural practice component of FinOps. We're going to talk about how to transform your FinOps program from a one-time, short-term cost optimization initiative into a scalable, sustainable cloud cost management program. And to do that, you need long-term culture change. You need to foster a cost-conscious culture in your organization. This is the kind of work that organizational change is built around, introducing new ideas or behaviors across the entire company. Or in this situation, introducing a new idea or behavior across your finance and engineering teams. And that's hard, right? Culture change and organizational change are never easy. 1996 research from John Cotter cited that only 30% of respondents' change management programs succeeded. Only 30% succeeded. And McKinsey performed a similar survey in 2008 and discovered the same thing. Only 1 in 3 change management programs were successful. Now, this is some data from the 2022 State of FinOps survey, an even more recent survey. FinOps practitioners were asked what their biggest challenges were in enabling FinOps in their organization. And there's a lot of data here, but I do want to highlight a couple key points. 30% of respondents said that getting engineers to take action on cost optimization was the biggest challenge that they faced. And 22% of respondents said that organizational adoption of FinOps was the biggest challenge that they faced. So that's 52% of respondents that said culture is the main issue they face with successful cloud cost management programs. And I'm going to pause to say that again. More than half of FinOps practitioners today expressed culture change as a major hurdle for successful FinOps programs. Culture change is hard for everyone. Lots of companies are struggling with this. And it's usually because they fail to implement one or more of these three key business practices. Get senior leadership bought in and communicating, incentivize your employees to care, and make the happy path the easy path. You need all three of these practices for a successful FinOps program. And we're going to dive deep on each one today to talk about how you can get them up and running in your company. Okay, business practice number one, ensure leadership buys into the importance of cloud cost work and communicates that work frequently to all key players in the company. If you're going to sell this to leadership, or if you're a leader selling this to your company, you need to explain why the company should care about cloud cost management. Why is FinOps important to the company? It could simply be a need to understand why the AWS bill is more than you forecasted, or your GCP or Azure or other cloud spend bill is more than you forecasted. I worked with a client who was just starting their FinOps journey, but we're already reporting the cloud spend to finance every month per business unit. And each business unit's analyst would review that spend month over month and year over year and highlight any discrepancies or fluctuations that they saw. But they weren't always able to explain what those fluctuations were. So the team that owned the allocation tasks, the reporting tasks, started itemizing monthly spend for each business unit rather than providing a single lump sum figure. And this list of allocated spend included the cloud usage for each business unit and allocations for shared resources like observability tools and shared accounts. And so the analysts realized that there were other things being added to monthly spend for their business unit outside of just the cloud usage. And with that knowledge, they were able to update their forecast models because their forecast models only focused on cloud usage itself. It didn't account for allocations for shared resources. And then that gave them an opportunity to talk with other teams and other parts of the business to find ways to optimize those shared resources across the entire organization. I also worked with a media client who owned multiple products, and each product was owned by a specific engineering team, and leadership wanted to see accurate operating costs for each project, or sorry, for each product. And so we aggregated costs across multiple accounts that were all tagged with a given product name or a team name. So for product A, any account, any cloud account that was tagged with that team name, we aggregated all of those together and presented that as the monthly spend for that team. Well, unfortunately, one team wasn't aware they were responsible for several accounts that had their product name or team name on them because they weren't using that account. It had been tagged with their name, but then they weren't building or managing any of the workloads in that account. So FinOps surfaced a budgeting discrepancy that leadership didn't even know was happening. And it helped teams more accurately budget their spend by knowing which accounts they were responsible for. It could also be that finance needs better visibility into which products are the most expensive to run on the cloud. One client I worked with, their product architecture required a lot of data transfer across multiple regions inside and outside of their cloud networks. And it was really, really expensive. They had discounts on data transfer, but it wasn't enough. So they started reviewing the best ways to optimize their cloud spend. And they priced their existing cloud architecture, their existing model, against the same architecture if it lived in a private data center. And they actually decided to move this workload back to the data center because it was cheaper to run in a data center than it was to run in the cloud. So FinOps work gave them the confidence to make an informed, data-driven decision that ultimately decreased operating costs. And you could also take this a step further by measuring how your cloud spend is impacted by a given business KPI. I worked with a client who ran a SaaS platform, and as a SaaS platform, their pricing model was per user. So one of their most important KPIs was monthly active users. And every month, they measured their total infrastructure costs, their cloud costs, and their observability tool costs like Datadog and New Relic against their monthly active users on the platform to get an average cost per user and measure that against their price per user. And with this data, they strategized the best ways to increase revenue, whether that was through optimizing spend to decrease cost per user, increasing user engagement to decrease cost per user, or increasing their prices to increase the price per user. Again, FinOps gave them this visibility into their spend and confidence to make broader business decisions based on that spend data. And depending on the size and complexity of your company, it's not always a single business KPI that you may want to focus on. I worked with a client who ran a media platform. And again, since their product was a SaaS-based platform or SaaS-based business model, they charged per user and focused on monthly active users to gauge the health of their business. But in this case, when they measured monthly active users against their cloud spend, they didn't have a clear correlation. So they reviewed their product architecture and realized that part of their platform provided user storage. And so they adjusted their model to measure cloud spend against monthly active users and storage per user. So it wasn't just looking at the monthly active users anymore. They were measuring their cloud spend against both monthly active users and this storage per user metric. And they saw a much clearer correlation of costs. So FinOps gave them a more accurate financial model of operating costs and empowered them to make smarter feature decisions. The FinOps Foundation refers to these whys as FinOps domains. These are some of the domains you might want to focus on, and you can see that there's a lot here. You can't focus on all of them at once, nor should you. You need to prioritize the most important why for your company in this moment, and you need to prioritize FinOps against other business priorities. I worked with a client who couldn't seem to get their spend under control through existing processes, so they asked my firm to investigate. When we interviewed their top engineering teams by spend, we discovered one engineering team that refused to do any cost optimization work. So when we talked with them, they explained with data that they had made more money per month focusing on shipping new features than optimizing existing spend. So for them, FinOps work was a lower priority than feature work because it made the company less money. And once senior leadership understood this, they chose to focus their optimization efforts on other teams instead. And please do not constantly adjust business priorities. We've all been on a team where the priorities change week to week or even day to day, and that's not healthy. That's not productive. Leadership needs to clearly state which work is the top priority and give teams space to do that work. I worked with a client whose CEO declared that they needed to cut cloud spend, I think it was 15% year over year by the end of the calendar year. And this was millions of dollars. And senior leadership started discussing ways to reach this goal. They started brainstorming all sorts of different ways that they could cut cloud spend this amount. And then as they thought of these ideas, they instructed teams to work on each of these goals individually. So unfortunately, that meant that in a matter of weeks, teams were told to focus on product work and then cutting costs and then removing cloud waste and then re-architecting workloads. Teams never had time to complete a task before being asked to jump on to the next one. And that frustrated teams and decreased the amount of cost savings teams could realize during that period of time because they kept jumping from one project or one task to the next without being able to finish the thing that they were working on. They needed space and time to focus on one priority at a time. So whatever your why is, whatever reason you're pursuing FinOps right now, ensure that leaders are bought in and communicating that context clearly for everyone in the company. And if you think you're communicating enough of this context to your employees, you probably aren't. In 2022, Francis Flynn, a doctor of organizational behavior at Stanford Graduate School of Business, and doctoral candidate Chelsea Lyde examined communication between leadership and employees. They discovered that less than a quarter of participants rated their manager as communicating with the right frequency. And we saw a big push for over-communication with the COVID-19 pandemic as companies went fully hybrid or fully remote. But over-communication is still equally important for other business aspects too, like why FinOps is important for your organization. The best way to over-communicate is to listen to your people, listen to your employees to make sure your message is getting through. Actively listen to your employees and repeat back what you're hearing to make sure you're understanding them and they're understanding you. And note that I focused on leaders in this discussion and not managers. The two aren't necessarily the same. Key influential leaders can come from any level of an organization. Think about the people who are passionate and vocal about their work. Those are the people who you want bought in on FinOps. Those are the people who know how to get others engaged and on board. And that's important because you don't want your FinOps program to be a top-down change. You need that bottom-up engagement. You need employees engaged and on board with your FinOps program. You need to incentivize employees to proactively think about and care about cloud costs. So this is business practice number 2. An HBR article on change management mentions companies need buy-in from 2 groups of people for a project to be successful. Influential leaders, as we've just discussed, and the people who must deal with the new systems, processes, or ways of working. And that's going to be your employees. The change management solution firm ProSci talks about this as the desire to participate in and support the change. It's ultimately about personal choice. Each employee makes their own personal choice to support your FinOps program. A McKinsey study found that what leaders care about and communicate only taps into 20% of their employees' primary motivators. So that's 80% of employees' primary motivators that leaders are not aligned with. And that's a major missed opportunity to get buy-in from people executing your vision. You need to incentivize them to choose FinOps. And you can do that by translating the reasons for FinOps into personal and organizational motivating factors. Take your goal, take your why FinOps is important that we just discussed, and frame it in a way that aligns with employees' primary motivators. For example, what's in it for the employee? Is this an opportunity or is this a threat? I worked with a client who purchased a third-party cloud cost management platform for cost allocations, and they wanted everybody in the company to use it, all the engineering teams to use this new platform. Separately, product owners were asked to budget their own cloud spend outside of this platform. They didn't have access to this platform, so they only had access to the native billing tools in each of the cloud platforms where they had workloads. And so they were pulling all that data from native tools, like in AWS, they're pulling it from Cost Explorer. And every month, product owners would compare their cost, their budget that they had built from native tools against the spend that was allocated to them from this third-party tool, from this third-party platform. And they saw discrepancies that they couldn't explain. So product owners saw cost management initiatives and this particular third-party platform as a threat to their competency and their jobs. One product owner even outright said to me, if I don't accurately measure our spend, I could get fired. So they saw FinOps as a threat. The same client example I mentioned where the CEO declared that they needed to cut costs. There was one team that took this to heart and immediately did a bunch of cost optimization work on their own, which was absolutely amazing. They did a lot of amazing optimization work on their own when they took the initiative. It was fantastic. But leadership didn't know that they had already done all of this work on their own. So then leadership instructed me and my team to discuss optimization opportunities with them. And this team who had already done all this optimization work saw me and my team and this FinOps work as a threat, again, a threat to their job. They saw it as leadership telling them that they weren't good enough at their jobs because all of this optimization work that they'd already done wasn't good enough. So it was really demoralizing for them and they got really, really defensive. So again, they saw FinOps as a threat. It's also important to think about how effective has the business been with organizational changes in the past. I worked with a client who had recently gone through a series of mergers and acquisitions, and there was a lot of organizational changes going on simultaneously as business units standardized their operating procedures, standardized the way that they worked together. And leadership again declared that cost optimization was a high priority, and the centralized cloud team started meeting with engineering teams to discuss optimization opportunities. But to all of the engineering teams, FinOps and these optimization opportunities were just one more change alongside everything else that was going on at the time. And teams just didn't have the bandwidth to care anymore. They didn't see the other organizational changes, all of the things happening because of the merger and acquisitions. They didn't see all of those things resolving productively. So they didn't trust FinOps to succeed. And sometimes there are other factors impacting our employees outside of FinOps. I worked with a person who was up for a promotion and wanted to keep the focus on all the things that he'd already accomplished, all the amazing work that he'd already done that made him a shoo-in for this promotion. And then leadership declared a need for optimizing spend. And I showed up to him and his team with a list of optimization opportunities for his team. And he perceived me as a threat because I was tarnishing his reputation. I was hurting his chances for a promotion because I was showing all these things that he hadn't done that he could do. And so he downplayed or ignored the importance of FinOps to keep the focus on all of the things that would ensure his promotion. And this doesn't have to be workplace factors. It could be anything going on in the employee's personal life, like a breakup, or a death in the family, anything that could impact their stability. Even more bluntly, what are the employee's personal values and motivators? I worked with a client who needed to optimize their spend, but was influencing the entire organization via just a few individuals. The FinOps team was very, very small, and they weren't able to scale the work that they wanted to do very easily. So they invited more employees to join the FinOps discussions, the monthly cloud spend discussions. And one manager found a direct report who absolutely loved poring over data and framed FinOps as an opportunity to help the company by doing what they love. Gave them the opportunity to pore over spend data, cloud spend data, to ultimately find anomalies and find optimization opportunities to help the company. You know your team better than anyone else. These are just some of the examples that I've seen and some of the examples to think about. So find the best ways to align your team's desires with the goals of proactive, cost-conscious work with your why, what works best for your company right now. But it's not just about making your employees and your teams care about FinOps, right? Incentivizing employees to care about FinOps won't make them perform FinOps work. You need to change their behavior to adopt FinOps. And that's where business practice number 3 comes in. Make the happy path the easy path. For those of you who aren't familiar, the happy path is the default way to complete a task with no errors or exceptional conditions. It's like Dorothy and Toto in The Wizard of Oz following the yellow brick road to the city of Oz, or like the default flow to purchase items on Amazon.com. For your business, the happy path is your standard operating procedures, the default ways employees work to accomplish company goals. So to make the happy path the easy path, you need to align your business processes with FinOps goals. And to do that, you need habits. Habits are the routine tasks in our daily lives, like drinking coffee in the morning, brushing our teeth before we go to bed, or listening to a podcast on our daily commute. But we also have work habits too. We might check email or Slack or some other communication channel when we get bored. We might use the restroom before stepping into a long meeting, or eat lunch at our desk instead of taking a break. If you want your employees to do FinOps work, you need to make it easy for them to do that work. And you can do that by manipulating one or more elements of employees' habits. And we're going to dive deep into the science of this for a minute, so bear with me. Every habit has 3 components: a cue, a routine, and a reward. The cue triggers your brain so you know what kind of situation you're in and what routine to perform. For example, when you join a QBR meeting, the cue might be stepping into this meeting and your brain is triggered to think about not cost optimization. Your brain is triggered to think about strategy. Your brain is triggered to think about leadership. So the routine is a mental, emotional, or physical task you perform based on the cue. So in this QBR example, your routine might be talking at high level about department goals and department performance. Your routine is essentially that strategic thinking that has been queued up for you. And the reward helps your brain determine if this habit is worth remembering and repeating. If nobody engages with your ideas and commentary in the meeting, you probably won't participate in the same way again. But if everyone loves your ideas and builds off of them, you're likely to keep bringing the same mentality, that same focus to future QBR meetings. You're likely to repeat this loop. Your happy path for FinOps work is adjusting these three components of employee habits so teams are proactively thinking about cloud cost in their daily work. Because if engineering teams aren't thinking about cloud cost in their daily work, they're not incorporating it into their daily work, and you'll end up with reactive short-term work all over again. Veer Mizrahi made a great statement on LinkedIn where he said, a proactive approach can't be a derivative of cost. It should be part of the design, strategy, and provisioning process in engineering teams. So with this habit model, your routine is employees designing net new feature architecture with cost in mind. Your cue might be to prompt that task with a permanent agenda item in your design, strategy, and provisioning meetings to discuss cost as a trade-off against other elements like scalability, reliability, and security. And your reward has to be something the employee understands as the result of this routine, something that incentivizes them to repeat this loop. And this is where it's important to know what motivates your employees so you can incentivize them successfully. And this is just one example. Whatever your FinOps goals, make sure you find the right cues and rewards to train employees to perform FinOps work. So that's the happy path part. Now let's talk about the easy path part. Not every existing tool or process is optimized for ease of use in your organization, and those will need to change. For example, I worked with one client that wanted to tag all of their resources for more accurate visibility into the team spend in the cloud. And teams used a CI/CD pipeline for deployments. So I recommended they update the pipeline to automatically add tags as part of the deployment process. So the queue in this case would be deploying resources, and the routine would be tagging those resources as part of the deployment process. However, the CI/CD pipeline was owned by a centralized team who had no clear ways for us to request this change, let alone talk with a member of that team. There was no positive reward for teams to tag resources using the existing CI/CD pipeline, so they weren't incentivized to repeat this loop. They actively fought against the work. So this is an example of what not to do. Instead, empower your engineering teams to change tools and processes to reach the cloud cost goals leadership has set. Make sure there's clear feedback loops that allow people to adjust. In this example, there should have been a clear and easy way for teams to request resource tags be added to the deployment process. Because once tags are a default part of the deployment process, teams don't need to think about it anymore. They're automatically doing the work. Gartner reported that when employees primarily own implementation planning, change success increases 24% and improves the odds of the initiative being well received and sustainable. So the more you can get employees engaged and bought into these new habits and processes to accomplish your FinOps goals, the more likely they are to adopt the habits, do the work, and actually accomplish your FinOps goals. So ultimately, remember that FinOps is not short-term cost optimization. FinOps is long-term cost management, which can include, but is not limited to, short-term cost optimization. And the way to succeed with FinOps is with these three key steps. Get senior leadership bought in and communicating, incentivize employees to care, and make the happy path the easy path. Once you have these cultural foundations, all of the discipline components like technical work, architecture reviews, and cost optimization will all fall into place. Now, I have two final comments. The first is there will be disagreements as you implement each of these business practices. Not all leaders will agree on the priority of FinOps. Not all teams will buy into the new ways of working as you start adjusting them. And that's okay. That's healthy. When you bring different perspectives together, they're not all going to agree. What is important is that everyone feels heard and moves forward together. And second, remember that successful FinOps takes work. There is no quick fix for building a cost-conscious culture and managing your cloud spend long-term. If you get stuck and want to chat more, reach out to me. Obviously, we'll have Q&A today, but my DMs are always open. You are welcome to reach me on my website as well, and I'm happy to dive deeper on any of these topics offline. I also highly recommend taking a look at some of these additional resources. These were helpful for me on my journey, and I referenced a lot of these in our presentation today. And I will make these slides available online after this presentation, so you could review these as well in your own time. Thank you.
All right, that was amazing. Thank you so much. It's very interesting. Okay, so Q&A. Anyone who has any questions, please feel free to ask those questions in the chat or inside the Q&A tab. And we already have first question, by the way, Jesse. The question is how to guide or adopt any third-party tool for engineer to help them to make sure of cost-effective design.
Yeah, I think it's really important to focus on getting those tools into the process early. So like the quote from Veer Mizrahi, make sure that that tool becomes or is introduced into the design process. Bring it in as early as possible in the design meetings, in the architecture discussions. Start using it as early as possible and start using it as frequently as possible so that teams see it as a powerful tool they can leverage along to help them make the decisions about architecture and about other components of their workloads and their cloud spend.
Yep, thank you so much. Any other questions, anyone? Any tool, for example, that's the next question.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
The question is any tool, for example. So like any example of any tool that you can recommend.
Any tool that I can recommend for what purpose?
I guess it's related to the previous question. It's the same person. Tool for engineer to help cost-effective design.
I mean, it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I would say that the best tools to start with are looking at the existing billing data within whatever cloud platform that you have, the native billing tools within the cloud platform, to see what you're already spending. And a lot of these platforms also have calculators to help you understand the pricing models of their platform and their architecture. One that does spring to mind for me, I believe, is called InfraCost. I think it's mostly focused with infrastructure as code changes right now. I don't know if it would be helpful in creating a net new architecture, but it allows you to see essentially the cost of spinning up certain infrastructure and architecture. And it can be very, very helpful to just give engineers visibility into spend as they build.
Yeah, thank you. InfraCost is really good thing to get the changes in your infrastructure if you are fully on Terraform. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have another question. So, hi, I am 8. I am also a FinOps certified practitioner. My question: do you still FinOps limiting the creativity of engineers because if engineers start thinking about cost, it might limit the extent of the solutions? Good question, by the way.
Yeah, it's a really, really great question. I think the answer is potentially yes, absolutely. I think it really depends on what is the focus of the business at the time? Some companies just need to focus on getting the infrastructure, the architecture, the product out the door, up and running for their new clients or for existing clients. And so in that case, cost probably isn't going to be your focus. Whereas if you are already in a stable environment and at this point you are looking to focus on cost over other things like bringing in new users or attracting new customers, scaling the business, maybe that's the point where you want to start thinking about FinOps. So I do say that try to adopt FinOps as early as possible in the organization, or at least be aware of cloud costs as early as possible in the organization. But being aware of costs doesn't necessarily mean that you have to optimize spend immediately. It's more about being aware and seeing that visibility into your spend as you build and grow your products, because that's ultimately going to be most impactful. That will give you the understanding of, do we need to optimize this? Is this acceptable the way that it is? Do we need to focus on something else? And it'll help you prioritize your work and your goals accordingly.
Yeah, totally agree. Super.
That's
Anyone,
really
any
question.
other questions? Yeah, that's a really beautiful question. Yeah. Anyone, any other questions? Three, two, one.
I just saw one in Q&A. Can you please share examples to incentivize sales engineers in cooperating with new FinOps while they also do their normal day-to-day duties? Just a few unnamed examples. Incentivize sales engineers to cooperate with FinOps. I mean, I think the way that I like to think about this for sales and sales engineers in terms of thinking about FinOps is really, for me, a lot of the sales teams that I've seen that have any interaction with FinOps are more about using cloud spend data, that those operating costs of the product and the workloads, to make competitive sales decisions with potential customers. So for example, the client that I was talking about before that measured their infrastructure spend per user was ultimately able to work with their sales team to have more competitive price per user, because they knew that, for example, if their price per user was $6, but their operating cost was only $3, that was a $3 margin that they could work with. So maybe in a big client that wanted to have a price per user of $3.50, for example, or $4 per user rather than $6 per user, they were able to make those competitive cases because they knew that they would still be covering their operating costs. So for me, I would say the best way to have sales work with FinOps data is to use that operating spend data to empower the discussion of how much discount can you ultimately give? What leverage do salespeople have, sales engineers have to continue to grow the business without eating into revenue?
Okay, good. We have one more question from chat. It's about the presentation, if the presentation will be shared. I'm sure that the video will be shared and the presentation will be shared after that.
Absolutely. I will make the slides available online afterwards.
Super. Thank you so much. Okay, I guess if anyone has a few last questions, so maybe last question.
And if you think of any questions later, all my contact information is on my website, www.derose.cloud. And I'm happy, you're welcome to email me. I'm happy to answer them there.
Great. Super. So no more questions. Jesse, thank you so much. It was very interesting. It's a great topic, great questions.
Thank you so much for having me. This was an absolute joy. I'm so glad that I got to share all of this data with you and with all of the folks on the call.
Super. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.